Hi, welcome back. Sorry for being cut off. Instagram cut us off mid-sentence. How rude. You like Hi. So sorry to cut you off mid-sentence. How disrespectful.
On Al Gore's internet. Like,
Zed, please continue with what you were saying, please.
oh yeah, about The Last of Us. Yeah, so, I mean, I have a lot of problems with that game. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like it, but the multiplayer was amazing. But, like, okay, let's just take, again, spoilers. The game's 7 years old. If you haven't played it, I don't know what to tell you.
Say what the name of the game is, just for anybody else.
The Last of Us. The Last of Us. It came out in 2013. It's a post-apocalyptic game about a real-life fungus, actually, that mutates and affects humans. It's called the cordyceps. Normally, it affects like plants and snails and insects, but it mutates and affects humans. And there's different stages of infection, stuff like that. Like you get like runners, and then you have like stalkers, clickers. And... Anyway, so the main characters. Yeah, it's actually like kind of. Oof, man, that game is something else. But anyway, yeah. So Ellie, she is one of the protagonists in the game. She's immune, and Left Behind in Left Behind, the DLC, you find out like the story, like a little bit like what happened to her before the events of the main campaign, and basically her and her best friend Riley, who's black, they're like going through a mall, and they're like it's like in post-apocalypse, like they're kind of like running around and like having fun with each other, and they kind of have a lot of like there's a lot of like. And I mentioned Ellie, she's like 14, 15, so she's a teenager. And so like there's a lot of tension between them, like romantic tension between them. And they do actually kiss each other. But they both the sad thing is they both get bit because they're ambushed.
Why do queer things have to end in tragedy? Like, why do they have to be
and what makes it even worse is that, okay, Riley's black, right? So like, and again, it's just me, like, it's hard because it's like, it's just hard because I'm like, Ellie is like, why does like the white girl survives and is immune, but the black girl dies?
Because this is Hollywood, or this is
America. And like,
of course, the black story has to end.
Can we not survive the apocalypse? And that goes further on to the story too. Like all the black characters die, but it's just like, damn, like, can we not survive? Like, why? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, what is? You know what I mean? It's just like, damn, like, I kind of don't really understand like what's going on. Like it's very strange to me because. It's you do have like a character like who's like a black queer character in Riley, but then she gets killed. And I'm just like, it's just I don't know. It's like there's that has an impact. You know what I mean? Because like all like LGBTQIA plus people aren't like like white cis gays or aren't white cis lesbians. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? You have like POCs, you have like black, brown, indigenous, LGBTQIA plus people. So you have to understand and be mindful of that. Like when you're doing this, and understand the impact of like what it means when, like these characters both get bitten and infected, and the white character survives and she's immune, and the black girl dies.
It's heartbreaking. It's really, really heartbreaking that that's the only way that story, in its own uniqueness, can be told. It has to be ending in tragedy.
Exactly.
Unless there's some tragedy or unless there's some drama going on, it's not a proper queer person of color story. It has to have sadness. It's kind of like how Black stories in regular Hollywood can only be about like segregation or slavery. You can never have a Black person thriving and happy.
Always a struggle.
Sadness and struggle bus. No, we are not all on the struggle bus. Black people are not all
always a struggle.
Black people are not all on the struggle bus. Sometimes we're just fine. Sometimes we're on a regular bus.
Always a struggle. Like all the time. But yeah, it's just like, and that just goes into like why it's important to understand what intersectionality is and why it's important, because people's identities are layered and they're different. You know, it's not just, you know, like white cis queer people. It's not just, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just about white cis able queer people. Like, like, I think that's something that's also we have to be mindful of. You know, because, you know, often, you know, they're the ones who are centered, like they're the ones, you know, who are focused on, and that's not a representation of LGBTQIA plus people across the world. You know, it's not a representation at all. So, you know, it's important to understand and be mindful of that. And it's, the train's moving whether you like it or not. Like, it's either going to be on board or not. Like, you know, and it's, as you become more aware of these things, you know, you start to be more mindful of the fact that this isn't okay. You know what I mean? Like, or like, you know, like you start to notice subtle things that you may not necessarily have noticed before. And, you know, it affects you, you know, because you're like, damn, like, this is something that, like, is a really popular fandom, you know, are really popular, but it's not really okay. You know, like, it's like, and like, whenever you try to have these conversations, like, you know, when I try to have the conversations about, like, why, you know, The Last of Us is problematic, it's like, oh, well, you know, like, we have representation, you know, like, you know, like, we should, you know, like, it's a great game, like, you know, we get Ellie, you know, we have this bit, you know, like, and I'm like, not really what I'm saying. You're not really listening, you know, like, you're not really... Be happy
with what you have,
don't with what you have.
Like, beggars can't be choosers. That's kind of the aura that they're giving. Beggars can't be choosers. I'm not begging. I don't need to beg, but if I'm going to ask for something properly, I want something properly done. Like, if I'm going to a restaurant and I want a hamburger well done, I don't want it rare. I want it well done. Don't be telling me that I have to be grateful that I got the hamburger. And
exactly.
You know,
like, no, like, and it's just like,
it's my money, give you my time, give you my views to invest in your whole conglomerate of entertainment. You might as well do a good job at taking the time to represent me, my story, my essence, my everything properly. That's not too much to ask if I'm giving you something in return.
And you just need to listen, you know, like, and to really hear what people have to say.
Yeah.
You know, that's all we're asking, like, because, you know, you want to be able to see yourself positively. You want to be able to know that, you know, like, oh, you can survive the apocalypse.
Yeah.
You know, it is possible to know that you can, like, live through this. You know, like, it's possible. You know, like, it's because, like how many post-apocalyptic, you know, like, movies or genres do you know where, you know, we just don't make it, or we're just not there because it's like we must have just vanished, or the rapture came and
I don't know. I don't think I can think of an example.
So it's like, you know, so it's like, yeah, it's just like, it's just being mindful about things like that, because those are things that are very common, and, you know, when you're more aware of it, you start to realize that it's not okay, and you start to realize that, you know, it's important to take the time to be hypercritical, you know, and that it's important to be to be vocal and to be hypercritical, because otherwise things aren't going to change.
And then,
you know,
and then when you do
No, go ahead. I'm done.
I was going to say that when you do finally have a story being told properly, audiences will respond. We will respond to it, and we will eat that ish up. Like an anime that I think did a queer story properly would be Wandering Sun, featuring the character Shuichi Natori. I think that's how you pronounce it. Shuichi is a little boy who is transitioning into a female. And that's during the time where she is going through elementary school or early middle school days. So she's approaching puberty. She's approaching how to go about representing her identity with her friends, with her families, with her loved ones. How is she feeling internally? How does she feel like she wants to present her gender identity? And that story, even though it's not necessarily like the most popular show in Japan right now compared to like the Yaoi Yuri that's like oversaturating the market, something like that did matter. Something like that did have an impact on someone that does resonate with that story. A trans person, male or female, can resonate somewhere with it, and they will eat that ish up. So once you do the story properly, and this can even be applicable to not just LGBTQ representation, Black representation, Indigenous representation, female, male, non-conforming, all different types of representation. Once you do it properly, we'll eat it up. So it's not like all the hard work that you think it is to make these stories told properly is going to go in vain. Once you do this so-called such hard work that you can't think of, when all you got to do is just hire
right.
But again, no one wants to talk about that.
Oh my God, I swear.
The results will come right afterwards.
It's not difficult, you know, like it's just a matter of, are you going to put the effort in to make sure that it gets done and that you're hiring the right people, you're putting the right people in these spaces? Because at the end of the day, it's like, we're going to be here and we ain't going nowhere. And then like, and I feel like people are being more mindful and aware of the fact that the importance of inclusivity and diversity, right? Like, because, and like I've been seeing it a lot with, I was saying a lot with 28 Days of Black Cosplay, right? Because and how important, it was to take into account that, give me like 10 minutes. It's important to take into account the fact that you're able to see more and more people who are understanding that, like who are you inviting to these cons, right? Like who are you inviting to these cons, right? Like who are you bringing there? Like what types of Black people are you bringing there? Like are they like the ones who are like to minimize the importance, but like are they the ones who are more acceptable? Like the straight sized ones, like the ones who the more light skinned ones, the ones who don't speak on things like like the racism and colorism. The more palatable ones, the ones who like are not problematic, you know what I mean? Because it's like, so like the ones who are like, so it's like, I think it's important to understand that, people are being more hyper aware of the fact that a lot of this stuff is not okay. Like it's bullshit, and people are taking the time to be critical about it and to put pressure on like these developers, put pressure on these illustrators, put pressure on these shows, put pressure on these creators who, for such a long time, have gone with no accountability.
Yes.
And now it's like, we ain't having it.
I want my story told. I want my queer story told. Do it right.
So yeah, I think it's yeah. So.
So wow, this is a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say.
Shows I can talk about like on and on about in terms of like which one's been good and which one's been bad. But I think we can pretty much agree that the root problem is who are in these writing rooms, whether it's cartoons, anime, video games. Who's in the writing rooms telling the story? What are their intentions? Are they trying to do something for good or for bad or for just profit? Do they have enough respect for the diversity of their audience to do them service? Because they can, of course, pander to the majority. That'll give them the quick buck that they want. But do they care about the consumers that don't get their stories told as much? Are they going to fight for the small person or the small minority pockets within that community that just wants their stories told properly? 9 times out of 10 is usually the for-profit answer and route that we go down, and which is very unfortunate. But I think because people like you and me and other content creators are being so much more vocal about what we want and what we expect, the direction has been changing. And that's where it's been changing in things like Steven Universe. That's where it's been changing in things like Wandering Sun and other shows like, what are some other shows I can think of? Like
Mad shows. Like,
there are not shows. There are not I can think of. Like
I'm saying, you like
Anna from Tokyo Godfathers, Ymir and Krista from Attack on Titan. Their story is pretty good too. I mean, granted, it's based on a whole bunch of shared trauma and not being able to come to terms with their full identity, but it's at least something. Yeah, we're moving in the right direction. We started off with a rocky history where it was a shame to talk about these subject material. We were starting off with vagueness and ambiguity in both America and in Japan. Then we moved into the whole using tropes to push a story along, mainly Japan through Yaoi and Yuri. And now we're in a place where we're finding a balance. We're not completely there yet, but we are getting closer and closer to a balance. And for all we know, 10 years from now, hell, 5 years from now, we could probably be talking about a bunch more shows and a bunch more games that do take those stories and narratives seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have someone in the comments. Hi. We have, what is it with queer characters being put through trauma? I don't know why we have to be put through trauma. Like, Ymir and Krista did not. Granted, Attack on Titan, everyone's in trauma. So,
oh my god! Like we're just talking about that. Like,
why do you think we had to constantly put through trauma? Can't we just be chilling? Why do we always gotta be on the trauma?
Oh my god, yo! We were just talking about that, yo. Like,
we were literally just talking about that. Let us reiterate. Why do you think characters are constantly put through trauma instead of just existing in happiness?
Honestly, I feel like it has a lot to do with the psychology of us as humans.
Do they like,
you know, because there's something about inherently about just with I personally, for me, I feel like with like the way capitalism is specifically, that glorifies suffering and glorifies pain, and as if it's necessary. Because it's like, oh well, you have to struggle. You can only get 2 hours of sleep a night, like, if you want to quote unquote make it. Even though capitalism it doesn't allow you to do that. But you know, there's something about it, or like the whole idea of like frats and sororities and fraternities, or like, you know, like the whole like, you know, like hazing. You know, these whole things of like having to break you down, or having to like, you know, break you down, or having to like inflict pain on you in order for, you know what I mean. Like, it's just like there's something inherently about, at least like for me at least, about like capitalism that makes us believe that it's necessary in order to accept something, or it's necessary in order to make something palatable. You know, like, oh, like it's like, you know, you have to be put through trauma, you have to be put through pain, but no, like those aren't the only things. And like, I know it's not anime or comic related, but you know, I talk a lot about like Pose, like on FX, and how like amazing of a show it is, because yes, like HIV/AIDS crisis, you know, was a crisis, you know, for like Black, you know, brown LGBTQIA plus people, like in general, but that wasn't the center of the show. Yeah. You know, like, yes, it was a part of the narrative, but that wasn't what it was about. It was about family. It was about ballroom culture. You know what I mean? It was about growing, and you know what I mean? Like that's what it was about. It wasn't about the pain and the suffering of like, oh my gosh, like HIV/AIDS, like we're all dying, like we're all miserable. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't. So, but I do feel like there's something about trauma that people just gravitate towards, because think about it. Like, think about like reality TV. Think about like these shows like True Life, like Intervention, right? Like it's like we're attracted to it. You know what I mean? Like we're attracted to seeing pain and suffering. Like, you know, it's just like, and I don't know. Like, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know the psychological terminology. I'm sure there is psychological terminology like for that, but you know, there's something about us that like we gravitate towards it. Like, you know, it's like we enjoy consuming it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we enjoy seeing the suffering, we enjoy seeing the pain, because maybe in a way because it's not us, or it's because it's because, you know what I mean? It makes us maybe forget about our own, you know, like seeing somebody else. But yeah, I feel like it's just, you know, there's something about it, because like it's everywhere. You know, like from like the news to like, you know, like I said, TV shows, like reality TV shows, like movies, like, you know, so there's something distinct inherently about it, that, you know, like people just enjoy consuming. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm guilty of that too. I'm gonna keep it above. Like, I'm guilty of that. Like, you know what I mean? Because like it's I feel like it's kind of subconscious, low key. Because, you know what I mean? But like catfish, like I Like, I'm not gonna lie, I love watching that show, but like, because I mean, you know, but at the same time, it's like, damn, like, a lot of these people really have gone through traumatic stuff, like, and you know what I mean? It's just like, damn, like, you know, it makes you think about like, why do I love that show so much? You know what I mean? Like, why do I like Catfish? Like, you know.
Me, when it comes to answering that question, I agree with you on 100%. Let's see. Do you guys think that the type of representation affects how people perceive queer people in real life, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
100%.
Absolutely. But going back to the original question that you had about why do they like seeing us in pain, I think that just has to be a generalized theme for any minority group. Like, if we're going to talk, let's talk about like black stories. The first few black stories that we ever got in America was slave stories, usually portrayed by white people in blackface, which is horrendous. But we always got black slave stories. When you finally have a marginalized group making noise and making their presence known in the general public, what's the first thing that they talk about? Their pain, their struggle. So the people in power are only hearing, okay, pain and struggle is all these people talk about. If we're going to entertain them, let's talk about something that they know. Only pain and struggle. Hence why we've been inundated with like slave movies and movies about segregation, because as for black people, that's all we keep talking about. Not that we shouldn't keep talking about it. It's
important. Yeah,
but it's just one of the things that they keep hearing over and over again. Now, when it comes to queer stories, what do they hear from queer communities? Pain and struggle. Pain and struggle. They're going to portray that because that's all. Not that we all want to talk about, but that's the only way that they can even acknowledge our existence, through our pain and struggle. If we're just happy, no one's gonna talk about it. Like, if we would just see like a black family that's happy and healthy and doesn't have any type of controversy around them in like, say, media or like celebrities, no one talks about that. But if they're going to be saying like going through some type of drama or some type of pain, then their story is sensationalized. So
you want to see it. Like,
you want to see the pain.
Like, let's keep it a buck. You want to see it.
Pain, but also that's what people in power associate with our communities. They associate our communities with some type of pain. For the gay community, it was AIDS. For the black community, it was slavery. For whatever other community, it was some other pain that we were trying to make them understand, but ended up becoming the forefront of our whole identity.
You know, like, this is hard, you know, because like, it's like the stories need to be told, you know, but to answer that question though, you know, it's like,
yes, oh, you're happy, how boring. Thank you, exactly.
I do think it's important to understand that, like, yes, representation does affect how people are seen, especially people are seen in real life, because when it's not cis heteronormative, then, you know, what you see is going to be, you know, something that you expect, because it's like, if you don't grow up, like, it's like, okay, like, you say you grew up, like, you're a white person, you grew up in a white neighborhood, you haven't seen any black people, right? And the only movies that you've seen are Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, South Central, right? That's what Paid in Full, like, you know, New Jack City, like, that's what you're gonna think, because you haven't, you know what I mean? That's what you're gonna perceive. So, and the same does apply, you know, to LGBTQIA plus people, because if you don't know anybody or you haven't seen anybody, well, you can't actually see, let me not say, but you know, if you don't know anyone, or, you know, it's just like, that's going to be your perception. Like, if you like watch Will and Grace, like, that's going to be your perception of what a gay person is supposed to be. You know what I mean? If you watch Ellen, you're going to think that's what, you know, like, you know, a white cis, you know, lesbian woman is gonna, you know what I mean? So that's what you're gonna think, because that's what you see. So I do agree. I think that's gonna be the perception, and it's hard because, you know, it's a balance, because you want to make sure that the visibility is there, but at the same time you want to make sure it's the right kind of visibility, because you know, there's people who don't know, or people who are unaware, like, if that's all that they see, they're gonna think like that's their reality,
and that's where the harmfulness comes into play.
You know, that's what, yeah, like, you know, and like, but there is absolutely room for growth in people who do choose that. But yeah, it absolutely is a challenge, though, you know, and that's something that, like, has to absolutely, you know, continue to change, because, you know, it really isn't okay, in any way, shape, or form, but at the same time, it is a reality, because when you don't grow up or you don't know anybody, then that's kind of where you are. You kind of get stuck in that place where because this is what you've seen like on TV or what you've read about. That's what your perception of that group of people is going to be, solely based off of, you know, like that minimal knowledge that you may or may not have. You know, yeah. So it's but yeah, there are like layers to it too, like you mentioned before, like in the yaoi and yuri, like the fetishization and how it's made for the straight gaze, and you know, like even though that's fictional, like it's illustrations, you know, it's like it's on pages, you know, those tropes and those things like exist in real life, especially for queer LGBTQIA plus people. Like they're heavily fetishized. Like these relationships are heavily fetishized. Like we can go on and on about the way, like, you know, specifically, you know, queer women, lesbian women are heavily fetishized by straight men. You know, like we can go into that. You know, like it's disgusting. You know, but
we could also talk about how like a lot of pride communities, like a lot of pride parades, have gone from representation for the queer community to more like a party for straight people. That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like pride is no longer for us. It's kind of like, oh, we have to include everybody, but then it's like you have those people that are making it into like a festival for them, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm wearing like my little rainbow tattoo and my little rainbow bandana. I'm for the people. Let me take a selfie. Yeah, exactly. You agree. Thank you. You know I'm right. No one's talking about it. You know I'm right.
Oh my god.
Everything has to do with the straight gaze, and it's like, no, we're not here for you, boo boo. My existence is not here for you.
Like you know who was throwing bricks at Stonewall? You know who was doing it? Like you know who threw the first bricks?
Tell the people. You
know what I'm saying? Like, do you know who threw the first bricks? Because it wasn't the straights. Straights was out there in their uniforms breaking down doors, trying to get the queer people out of there. You know, like, in certain things, so great. It's
bro, I could go for on and on about this. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling all types of emotions right now.
It's just like it's absolutely 1000% valid, Joe, because that's where the challenge comes in, and it's like what you stated before, like many times, about that yaoi and yuri straight. Like that's just like one example and like one symptom, like being in the straight gaze. But then you brought up like there's so many others, like, you know, like there's so many others, and it's like
nothing can be just for us.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
We keep it safe.
You know, but if anything, that can be tabled for volume 2.
That can.
So
we can make this a thing. We got that time. We can talk about this all day. I'm ready.
So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely. I'm down. So, you know me, because I ain't doing shit.
Exactly, will be Brittany. Now it is for everyone. Apparently now.
For everybody. It's for everybody.
Protected by our community is now for everybody because we have to be inclusive. Like, no, something needs to be for me.
Because I'm
not ready for this conversation.
No, because like dead ass, like sometimes, like not even sometimes, you have to gatekeep. Let's keep it a buck. Like, okay, gatekeeping goes. Gatekeeping is. Let's keep it a buck though. It can be weaponized. Yes. Gatekeeping can be weaponized in a very harmful and toxic way. But at the same time, it's very important and needs to be done.
100%.
So, like, let's keep it a buck.
For female culture, for all the cultures, you need to gatekeep to some extent, because then everyone will start abusing it. Everyone will start riding a bandwagon, thinking it's cool and trendy. That's where you get appropriation. Like, okay, bring it back. Because
gatekeep can be done in a very positive and important and intentional way, but at the same time, it can be weaponized. But it doesn't change the fact that it's important and it's needed.
Yes.
So
it's all for the sake of protection. Not gatekeeping to keep people out, but to mainly keep
out,
people who are important to the community in and safe.
Safe.
It's just about safe. Keeping your safe space and your boundaries. Like, there's nothing wrong with boundaries. Not everything is for everybody.
And it's fine. It's to be like, if you see a space that says, you know, trans women only, trans men only, black and brown trans women only, like, you know, queer men only, bi men only, bi women only, like, okay, this, first of all, it's not for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's where privilege comes in, because privilege is you getting upset because you're used to having everything accessible to you.
Preach!
And when it's not, you feel like something's taken away from you. And as a result of that, you're like, oh, like, damn, like, wow, like, why is that? First of all, it's not for you, but you're used to them. So when it's taken away, you're like, oh,
Now you're getting salty and want to have an attitude,
You know,
and want to cry
and call 911.
I'm not here for it.
You know, like, but but yeah, for real, it's.
We can have that for another day, though. The whole point of this topic was about whether or not like media is representing us or pandering. I think the main point is it's a mixed bag of good and bad examples. It's just more so the problem that we need to make sure that the good outweigh the bad by having proper people in like the power positions to make those stories a reality. Oh
and
gosh.
The accountability.
Accountability. It's all about accountability.
Like it's all has been long.
We've been talking about that a long time.
Please make sure to check out those Haku's channel, like, subscribe, turn on notifications to make sure that y'all know.
Thank you.
Because she about it, you know what I mean. So y'all seen the live stream, so y'all know she about it. So ZOTAKU on YouTube. Okay. Thank you, Zed, so much for discussing this topic with us. Of course, one day, I got you. I'm happy. Please subscribe to their channel as well. They make great video game content, and we'll see y'all next time. Honestly, during the quarantine, because that time. Y'all know y'all ain't doing shit. So let me not say that, but those of you who do have the time, I don't want to be, but if y'all do have the time and y'all find yourself wanting to get on and talk about things, we'll be here. So but otherwise, stay safe. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Do your best out here. Wash your hands, please. If you have access to it, do your best distance if you can, if you have the privilege to, because everybody don't have it. Also, take care of your mental health, please. Mental health, yes, please. Friends, talk to your therapist if you have one. Yeah, please do. So heart goes out. Sending lots of positive vibes and energy to all of y'all, especially those who need it. And yeah, that's all I got. So thank you so much to those of you guys who stuck around and joined us. Thank you for your energy. Y'all. Your energy gave us energy, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate y'all. Thank you. So I'm gonna see you around. Okay. Peace. Bye, deuces, all that stuff. Good night.